All right, good morning, everybody. Today's daf is daf Mem Hey, Maseches Eruvin. We left off yesterday about overlapping tchumen. If there's a person left a tchum and he's more than 2,000 amos beyond the area, and let's say so the area he's in now, if there's another tchum there and that tchum overlaps. So maybe because it overlaps, it connects them to the other. So that was machlokas. So he said the last thing we suggested was perhaps there's a differentiation if the person was in that area, like the case of the cave, he was in the area or in the cave while Shabbos started. If Shabbos started, then maybe you can say it. Then maybe you can say it by overlaps, therefore it's connected. But otherwise, you wouldn't. So the Gemara says, V'heicha, last line, the four words from the end, the last line of Mem Dalet Amud Beis, V'heicha l'Shabbos lo, but where he wasn't there, right, before Shabbos, right, then he would not, there is no Havlas Tchumen. V'otan, we learned in the Mishnah, turn the page and Daf Mem Hey Amud Aleph, V'otan, Rebbe Eliezer Aimer Shtayim Mikones. We said earlier, if a person went, he went outside his Tchum, but he was still within two amos. So now basically he was 2,002 amos away. Right time, then Yikonis, he can go back in. However, Gimel, once he's 3 amos out of his tchum, then lo Yikonis, then he can't go in. So my lav, Rebbe Eliezer Latame, is Rebbe Eliezer going to shita? So, which an opinion we're going to see later on, actually in a mission today. Dalmar v'hu be'emson, the arba amos diavile rabbanan. So we're talking about a case of where he basically, when we measure when a person gets Dalet Amos, that he is in the middle of the Dalet Amos. In other words, that he only gets 2 Amos in each direction, right? He does not get 3 in 1 or get to choose where his Dalet Amos is. He gets 2 in each direction. The Arba Amos and therefore the Arba Amos is what the Rabbanan give you. And Kaman, right? And it's Kaman, Demivlandum. Right, and therefore it's like basically it was absorbed. In other words, if he's within 2, then you could say, well, now he's in his new rishus, his new quote unquote tchum, even though his tchum is not 2,000 amos in each way, it's only 2 amos in each way. But since it's within 2, it overlaps, and since it overlaps, he's able to re-enter his old 2,000 amos. So you see, even if he wasn't there before Shabbos, it's muvla. The Kamar Yikanes, and it says so that he can go ahead and enter. Alma have lost Tchumen. You'll see. We see over here that Tchumen, that the overlapping Tchumen is something that even applies. In other words, even if he didn't start Shabbos there. So Amarle Rab Barachan Labai Umid Rabbi Yezer Kamasivas Lamar. What are you asking on the opinion of Rabbi Yezer? What about the other opinion holds that not like that? There is the Rabbanan, right? Samarle, yeah, the Shmile Minei, because I heard the Mar Ad Kan Lo Pligi Rabbana Le Rabbi Yezer Elo Davar Harishus. They only argue, right, over the Harishus. In other words, whether a person went basically for no mitzvah, he left his tchum for no mitzvah, then there was a machlokas. Aval Davar Mitzvah Modile. But when it comes to a mitzvah, right, which is really our case. Remember, our case of the Mishnah was talking about a person left for let's say to testify in the Chodesh or to do another mitzvah to rescue people. So in that case, he would get more than the Dalet Amos around him. He would get 2,000 Amos. So therefore, even our case, you couldn't answer. Now, so we said in the Mishnah, if you look back in the Mishnah, we saw yesterday, it was Mishnah in the middle of Mem Dalet Amud Beis, right? We had the line that says, personally, he's a rishus. If he didn't leave his tchum, then he's still basically considered into it. We explained what the chiddush was there, and then we said, whoever goes to save, he can return to his place. Now we want to know what that means. Now, so it says the Gemara V'afilu Tuva. It sounds like that he can go back to his place even if he's more than 2,000 amos beyond, right, of where he originally left. In other words, he can go all the way back, right? He travel, 5 miles back. The Reisha says Al Pai Mama Vasulo. The Reisha says he only gets 2,000 amos and nothing more. He's allowed to go ahead and let's say he went out to go ahead and save somebody, right? The Jews were under attack, and he went to go ahead and go save them. So he's allowed to bring his weaponry all the way back. So my kusha was a kasha. Dilma lahad zil shani. And guys, I understand even what the question was. Maybe over here, lahatzil is different. It's maybe if someone was going for one mitzvah for whatever reason, then he gets 2,000 amos. But let's say he was going to go ahead and save the pikuach nefesh, then maybe he's allowed to go all the way back. So Eli kasha ha kasha. Rather, if you're going to ask the kasha, it's like this: the Tanah we learn in the Mishnah. When it came to Eidus HaChodesh, this is the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah. In the beginning, the person will come to testify, and even though, let's say, other people came to testify already about the month, and therefore they were not needed, they would stay there. They have to stay the entire day. In the Chutzner by the Beis Hamikdash, by the Sanhedrin. So he's getting Rabbi Gamliel Hazaken. Sheyesh lehem alpayim amma l'chol ruach. Then Rabbi Gamliel Hazaken was misaken that they don't have to stay there. They can get 2,000 amos in each direction. V'lo elu bilva. Not only this, amru ela afilu chachma hava lelelet. Or even let's say someone comes to help someone give birth. Right, the midwife helped give birth, or v'habal lahatzim min agayis min anoah min apoilas min adeleka. Or if you go ahead and you save someone from an army, or from a raging river, or from a fallen building, or from a fire, harei hein ka'an she'ir, they are like the people of the town. The yesh lehen alpayim amad. Then they get 2,000 amos l'kol ruach in every direction. So the Gemara says, v'sulo, and they don't get more. Right? So that's how you ask the kasha. Over there, it sounds like they're misake. Now, if you come for a mitzvah, you get 2,000, and then you can walk around 2,000 because it's not needed anymore. But now we see from our Mishnah, it says you can go back lim kaiman, which sounds like you can go even farther than 2,000 amos. You can go all the way back to your house or wherever you came from or wherever you want. Afila tuba. So Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, and that says on that Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav shechayzim mikli zayin lim kaiman. Right, we're talking about a case where basically where they have to we that which we say we can go farther as they want, they can go far to return their weapons to put in the proper place so they have it for next time. Because the time is learning a brisa. In the beginning, they used to go ahead if they needed the weapons and they were done with the weapons, they would go ahead and put it by a house, right, close to the wall, but they would not return it to the place we were taken from. However, so one time the Goyim recognized this v'rodfu achareyim, and then they chased after him v'nichnasu lital klizayin, and then they ran inside his house, this dark house, to go ahead and get their weapons. V'nichnasu oivim achareyim, and then the Goyim came afterwards. They re-entered after them. Dachu zed zeh, and they were basically pushing one another, and it was dark, and they're fighting one another. And then more Jews died than it would have had they just battled the Goyim. Because of all the confusion, because they didn't return their weapons to the proper place. And at that moment, in that moment, they said, you know what, when it comes to weapons, you can go ahead and return the weapons back to where they came from if you needed them, right, for the mitzvah, and even if it's more than 2,000 amos. So that which we say, is only going in the weaponry that you return weapons more than 2,000 amos, so you can return those back to your place. However, if you go out to do a mitzvah, that you get 2,000 amos from the moment that you don't need anymore. And if you're in a town, then you're like the people of the town, you get that area. And Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Omar Loikasha Kan Shenizchu Yisrael Es Umais Ha'olam Kan Shenizchu Umais Ha'olam Es Asva. So one is a case where the Jews are victorious. The Jews are victorious. Maybe you can answer like this: if the Jews are victorious, then there's no more a threat, and therefore you don't need to go ahead and return the weapons all the way back. However, if we're talking about the other nations were victorious over the Jews, then the Jews better be careful, and then they can go ahead and return the weapons to the place where they need it. And Amar Rav Yehuda Marav Nachem Sheyatzu Shitzaru Al Iris Yisrael. So if you have the Goyim that they're being mitzar, they're bothering, they're causing problems for a Jewish city. Ein Yitzin Aleim B'Klizai. Don't go out with weapons on Shabbos. You're not mechal Shabbos for that reason. And Tanya Nami Hachi and Nachem Sheyatzar v'chulei. And that which said the guy they're bothering the Jews, you can't go ahead and carry out your weapons. However, what takes the time of Murim? Kshabol al iske mama. They're coming to steal. They're coming to take some money. Then you don't go ahead and mechal Shabbos for it. But if they're coming to go ahead and harm Jewish lives, Yitzin Aleim B'Klizainan. So you can go ahead and take out your weapons and you can be Mechal Shabbos for it. And let's say you have a city, right? A border city, right? A city at the edge of the border. and that's where the goyim are causing problems. Afilu lo bo al iske nefashos, even if they're not coming to harm Jewish souls, to kill people. El al iske teven v'kash, they're coming for money, and not even a lot of money, even for straw, right? They're coming for straw and wheat or whatever. Yitzin alei zayin mechalas the Shabbos. Even then, since it's a border town, we don't want the borders to be open, and for now goyim to be able to have access in the future. Therefore, even if they're coming for a small matter, you're allowed to go ahead and be mechalas Shabbos to defend and also carry out your weapons. And Amar Rav Yosef Bar Menume, Amar Rav Nachman, Bavel Kir Hasmucha L'Safar Damya. And Bavel is considered to be a city, right? It's very chashuv Makom Torah, center of Torah. Therefore, it's considered to be like a border city that, for all reasons, if they're mitzar the Bavel, then you go ahead, you can be machal Shabbos to protect it. The Targum and Nahardia, and there was explained what type of Bavel, not all Bavel, rather Nahardia, right? The city or the town of Nahardia. And Darash Rav Dustoi, the mean Biri. So Darash Rav Dustoi the mean Biri. Ma'idachsi was a pasuk mean Vayigidu LeDavid. Laymore, and they told David saying, "Hine plishtim nelchamim beKeilo, v'hema shaisim esagranos." They said the plishtim, they're attacking Keilo, the town of Keilo, right? And they're attacking the threshing floors. Satana Keilo ira smucha l'saper ha'isa, right? The Keilo was, I guess, a town. It was a border town. V'heim lobo el aliske tem v'kash, and it means that they're only coming basically to steal straw, right? As the pasuk says, "V'hema shaisim esagranos," right? They're going ahead. They're going to basically attacking the threshing floors, the gronos, right? So he said they're only coming for straw, and they come into this border town. The Ksiva says, and he went to go ahead and be the Urim V'tumim, Lemor, Ha'ilech V'Kesi B'Plishtim Ha'ilech, should go ahead and fight the Plishtim for attacking the town and the threshing floors. Go ahead and fight them and save Kilo. So my Kuboile, what was the kasha there? Ile Me'ishari Aser. If the Shiloh was halachically easy allowed to go ahead and Machal Shabbos to defend them, Hare Beis Din Shashmul Haramasi Kaim. He can go ahead and ask the Beis Din and say halacha, and he should ask halacha, right? If it's considered a border town, I should have asked the Beis Din, and they would have permitted it. So Ella, rather, he didn't ask whether he's allowed to. He knew he's allowed to. Rather, David wanted to know if he was going to be matzliach in the attacking of the Plishtim or not. And Diganami, and also in the pasuk says, "Lech v'kisa Plishtim v'ashadas kila shmaminas." Says, go ahead, attack them and save Kila. It doesn't say defend Kila. It says and be the savior. So therefore, we see that David Melech was asking if he was going to be matzliach or not. Shmamina, indeed. Naya Mishnah. Mishnah says, "Mi sheyashav b'derech." A person was going out. He was traveling, and Shabbos was coming. Misha b'derech v'amad v'ra, and all of a sudden, and Shabbos started. He had no idea where he was. And now the halacha is that you're actually allowed to go ahead and set up your makom shvisa if it's within 2,000 amos where you're standing. Okay, so let's say I know within 2,000 amos from outside the town, right? Outside the town of Chicago. So even though Shabbos is starting now, I can have in mind my makom shvisa, even though I didn't put an eruv there. If I have in mind my makom is somewhere within there, i.e. Chicago, then Chicago can actually become my makom shvisa, and if Chicago is my makom shvisa, then I get the entire city plus 2,000 amos outside it. So therefore, one is allowed to do that. So let's say one didn't realize, right? It was just there was a hill there. He says, "Okay, I'll be over here right on the edge on this side of the hill." All of a sudden, he realizes that he's within 2,000 amos of a town. So Misha he's close to a city. So since he didn't realize it before Shabbos, lo yikanes. He can't go ahead and travel throughout the entire city. Rather, he just gets the 2,000 amos from his makom shvisa because he had no idea when Shabbos started. However, Rabbi Yehuda Omer yikanes. A person could enter even though he didn't necessarily have it in mind. He could enter it and he can go there. And Rabbi Yehuda Ma'asav Haya the Nichnas Rabbi Tarfon below Miskavin. And there was a Ma'aseh, and Rabbi Tarfon, and I can prove it because Rabbi Tarfon, he did not intend to do it. And all of a sudden, he realized it was a city close to him, and therefore, l'chayra, he traveled throughout the city, even beyond 2,000 amos from his original makom, because he held that since the city was within 2,000 amos of his makom shvisa, the city was now basically his makom shvisa. So Zak the Gemara. So Tani, we learned Rabbi Yehuda, Ma'aseh Rabbi Tarfon, Shaya Halach B'derech. What time is Ma'aseh Rabbi Tarfon, which is mentioned? And he was going to derech v'chashkalo, and then it became dark. V'lon chutz ha'ir, and then he slept. It was dark. He slept outside the town. He had no idea there was a town. There was shachas in the morning. Matzu Raya B'akar. He saw shepherds there. So Amru Lo, Rebbe, Harei Ha'ir Lefanecha. Why are you out here outside the town? Just make a left around the corner, right? And then there's a city there. So Hichnis, Lefanecha, Hikanis, right? So I guess Hakanis Nichnas. So then he went ahead and he entered. V'yashu Beis HaMedrash, and Rabbi Tarfon went ahead and sat in the Beis Medrash. V'darash Kol Hayom Kula, and he learned the entire day. So what do you see from there? You see that even though he didn't have in mind, obviously he only realized it upon the morning, since it was within 2,000 amos, he was able to go ahead and use the city as Makom Shvisa. So the Gemara says, Misham Raya, could that be a proof? So Shema Blibo Haisa, maybe he knew it was there and he intended it at the beginning of Shabbos. Or Beis HaMedrash, Muvla B'Sayit Chuma Haya. So even if you hold that the city does not become his Makom Shvisa, right, he can still travel, right, within 2,000 amos of where he started Shabbos. So in other words, if it overlaps, right, if it overlaps a little bit, and the area, maybe the Beis Medrash was at the end of town. So the Beis Medrash was really within the 2,000 amos of his original Makom Shvisa. So therefore, it's not a proof that he was in the Beis Medrash learning all day, because perhaps the Beis Medrash, even though it was in the city, right, it wasn't the far end of the city, which he needed to use the entire city as Makom Shvisa to go ahead and access. Perhaps the Beis Medrash was within 2,000 amos of his original spot, and therefore, that's the reason why he was able to go ahead and enter.
Except didn't you say that he could travel for a mitzvah, and is he considering learning a mitzvah so that he can enter the tchum or whatever the? So
good question. So it could be maybe a mitzvah that one could not, maybe that's a mitzvah that's needed upon him. In other words, let's say Edus HaChodesh, right? Or he has to go ahead and save somebody. But stam to go ahead and do a mitzvah, to do kibbut aveim, that a person would not be able to do, right? Only if there was a chiyuv and that person to go ahead and do it versus, something maybe that he would fulfill. But it's a good question. Fine. Naya Mishnah. Mishnah says, Mi sheyashem b'derech. Now another case, a person, he's outside, he's, Shabbos, he had a little bit to drink Friday afternoon, and he fell asleep. And he woke up and it was already Shabbos. So a person, he was sheyashem b'derech v'lo yada shechashecha, and he doesn't know it got dark. Yesh lo alpayim amos kol ruach. He has 2,000 amos in each direction, just like if he was awake. Divrei Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, as Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, the Chachamim ein lo el arba amos. Now, says the Chachamim, no. You have to be awake and say, okay, this is my Makom Shvisa, and then therefore I get 2,000 amos in each direction. However, if he was sleeping, he couldn't have those intentions, and therefore he only gets 4 amos. And Rabbi Eliezer, v'hu be'atzman, and we actually saw this earlier. I mentioned on top. So he is in the middle. Now, is that what you said? He gets 4 amos, right? We're only talking. He is in the middle, and therefore 2 amos here, 2 amos is left, and 2 amos to his right. And Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, le'eza ruch sheyirtze yelech. He says, no, we're going to be very generous. He can use his 4 amos in any direction. You can go 4 amos to the right, but he can't go then to the left, or 4 to the left and can't go to the right. Rabbi Yehuda agrees. Once he chooses, he can't go pick and choose. He can't say, okay, right now I'm going to start to the right. Oh, now I want to go to the left. Can't do that. Now, if let's say you have 2 people, they were both sleeping when Shabbos started, they woke up, and let's say they were 6 amos away from one another, right? When they were sleeping, they woke up. Oh my, excuse me. No, let's say they were not 6. But let's say, okay, you can say 6. All right, let's say there are 6, right? Or let's say 3. All right, let's say 3. They have 3 amos for one another when they fell asleep. So and they overlap also. Therefore, each one has 2 amos each direction. So they overlap 1 amma in the middle, right? Like that, right? So each has their makom and they overlap in the middle. They can go ahead and put their foot in the middle and basically share the space of where they overlap. All right. However, on the condition, right, that bavad shelo yotzi zeh mitach shelo l'sech shel chaver, but he can't take something that was basically his friend's into his space, his own space, which his friend can no longer enter, which is beyond his dalet amos. And similarly, If there were three people, I'm saying move labinayim. Let's say there were three people, and the middle person basically overlapped, was completely by both of them. They were basically each. The middle guy was 2 amos away from each people, so both of them were with him. But the farther one, the ones on his right, and the ones on her left, were not connected, right, at all. Those were more than dalad amos. Who mutter iman? He's mutter to go to each side he wants. And each side of them wants to go together. However, but the two ends, they cannot go ahead and pass to one another because they are outside the tchum. Right? We don't say the guy in the middle is like a bridge, and therefore everyone's all connected. We do not say that. And Amar Rabbi Shimon Lamadar Daima, what's similar to l'shalish chatzeros hapsuchas l'zulazu. Let's say you have 3 chatzeros which are open to one another, upsuchas l'shis rabim, and they also happen to be open to rishis rabim. Irvu, now you have 3 chatzeros and irvu shtayim yonsayos. So the two, once again, you have 1, 2, 3 exact identical case. You have 1, you're right, 1, 2, 3, and then so the one in the middle has an eruv, so they can carry from this chatzer to this chatzer, and they also have another eruv that can carry from this chatzer to this chatzer. Right, but the two ends do not have an eruv with one another. So, so the people in the middle can carry out to them, or they can carry out to them. However, the 2 outer ones cannot carry through the middle one to the farther one because they do not have an eruv of one another, and therefore, even though this one's connected to here and this one's connected to here, we do not say it all connects. Fine. Let's see the Gemara. So remember, let's forget that last case with 3 people. We started off with a case of a person who was sleeping. He woke up. Rabbi Yechon ben Uri says he gets 2,000 amos, and the Chachamim say he gets 4. Okay, 2,000 amos versus 4. So boy, Rava, Mike said Rabbi Yechon ben Uri. What does Rabbi Yechon ben Uri hold? So Mike Saver, so Misaver Kosaver, maybe you say that over there that he holds Chafse Hefker Kain Shvisa. Maybe an object, right? Something which is Hefker, right? An ownerless object. And normally, right, an object is kind of, it goes after the makom of the owner, right? So if I own something and I fall asleep, right, or not even fall asleep, if I'm awake when Shabbos starts and my bag is 20 feet from me, okay, it doesn't mean that I can't, right, that the bag can only be moved, 2,000 amos in each direction for where the bag is, right? The bag goes after me, right? The bag is my makom shrisa, but object is hefker, right? It doesn't have an owner. So maybe the object has, wherever it is for Shabbos, it can be brought anywhere 2,000 amos of where it's at. So does he hold something which is hefker, acquires it's makom shvisa, in other words, object. And really, our Mishnah didn't have to talk about a sleeping person because a sleeping person is probably similar to a kalim because neither of them are functional, right? When a person is sleeping, or an object, right? Because it's inanimate, right? So you say within a kalim, and really you could argue with kalim. The reason why I talk about a case of a sleeping person, to tell you the strength of the rabbanan shita, that who hold that he only gets 4. That even though they could say, hey, once he awakes, right, he would be able to acquire his makom shvisa to get 2,000 amos in each way. However, yashanami kana, maybe you think that if he's sleeping, he also gets kamash malon. The rabbanan say no, since he was sleeping, he only gets 4. Delo, right? Maybe that's over here that we're talking about over here. That really, since that a person sleeping is like a hefker object, and a hefker object acquires 2,000 amos, and that's why he gets 2,000 amos. Dilmar, perhaps, maybe an object never acquires makom shvisa. An object can only be moved. An ownerless object can only be moved by 4 amos, right? And over here, but the reason why he doesn't get 4 amos, the reason why he gets 2,000 amos, since had he been awake, he could acquire it. So Yashanami Kana, therefore, since he's a human, right, and if he was awake, he would have got his makom shvisa. So too, when he's sleeping, he gets his makom shvisa. So Amar Rav Yosef says, Rav Yosef, Tashma, come and listen. If you have rain that fell from Erev Yontif, Yesh lahed al pai mamlucha ruach. They get 2,000 amos in any direction. Now, rainwater is hefker, right? So it seems to say that this inanimate object, right, gets, right, a hefker object gets 2,000 amos. And b'yantif, but that was only from Erev Yantif, right? B'yantif, it falls on Yantif. Harein karagli kol adam. then it is like any person who basically goes ahead and picks it up. Now, if you say Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri holds that a chever hefker it requires a shvisa, Hamani, whose opinion is Rabbi Yochanan, that's Rabbi Yochanan, right? It's Rabbi Yochanan because it says it gets 2,000 amos. It makes sense. But if you say that something which is hefker, i.e., like rain that fell from before Shabbos, is ain't kanim makom shvisa, Hamani, whose opinion is this that says they get 2,000 amos? Lo Rabbi Yochanan, lo Rabbanan. It's not Rabbi Yochanan. It's certainly not the Rabbanan, because Rabbanan says even a sleeping person only gets 4. So certainly a hefker object, i.e., rain that fell on Friday or Erev Yantif, would not get more than Dalet Amos. So it must be that he holds that the hefker object is Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. And Yosef Abaye v'kamila lahashmaitza. So Abaye was sitting there, he's teaching over, and he said over this limud, and Amar Rav Safra Abaye, Rav Safra heard it, and he said to Abaye, "It's I, the dilva b'kshavim, have smoke leiros kinan." Perhaps we're talking about rain that's close to the city, right? The anshe oisair daitem aleu. Right? And therefore, rain that's close to the city, basically the people who live by the town, they basically, their minds are on it. It's not hefker, but in other words, it's basically goes out of the townspeople. Samarlei, he said, no, let's talk about you want to think of why? That's not we learn in the Mishnah. Bor shal yachid, you have a pit, the water of a pit of a yachid, of an individual, karagli yachid, right? So the water of that pit goes like the person who owns it, b'shal oisa ir, and if it's a pit of the, it's a public pit of the city, Karagli Oisair, it goes after the city. The city is Makom Shvisa. The Shal Ole Bavel, and let's say it's a pit of those who are Ole Bavel. So Karagli Hamamale, right? It goes after the person who fills it. So in other words, since it's used by others, but individuals who are traveling, let's say from Bavel, right? And each one sort of has his own Makom Shvisa, right? You know, they're encamped, you know, in the general area, but they're not all next to each other. So everyone has their own individual place of a shvisa. So therefore, whoever draws the water goes after him. Vitanya, we have another brisa. Vitanya, we have another brisa. This is Borshel Shvatim Yeshnan Alpayim Amma L'Chol Ruach. And then we have another brisa that says a pit of Shvatim, right? People trying to Eretz Yisrael, so they get 2,000 amos, right? So if they get 2,000 amos, what do you see? They have their Malkum Shvisa. It doesn't go after the individual, right, who draws it. Rather, they have their own Malkum Shvisa. So rather not. You can say, right, one is Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who holds that it gets its own Malkum Shvisa, and the other is the Rabbanan, who say, no, normally an ownerless object only gets 4 amos, but if it was drawn by a person, then it was like that person intended to go ahead and have it, and therefore it follows the person. And Kiyosa, Lakamed Rav Yosef, came for Rav Yosef, Hachi Kamar Rav Safra. This is what Rav Safra said to Abaye, Hachi Adrele, and this is what Abaye answered. Samarle, Vamai Loi Temale, Megufa. He could have just added, he didn't have to go ahead and do the contradiction. He could have just said as a proof from the source that what Yochanan ben Nuri holds, right? If we're talking about rain, you said earlier, we're talking about rain, perhaps it was close to the city. It shouldn't have said that the rainwater gets 2,000 amos. It should have said they're like the people of the town, right? But it didn't say that. It said they get 2,000 amos. So you see, it's a clear source that which we said the rainwater falls from Erev Yantif is a hefker object. Hefker objects get 2,000 amos. And therefore, since it's a hefker object, 2,000 amos, it must be the shita of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. So therefore, clearly, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri holds a hefker object gets 2,000 amos in each direction, and similarly, a sleeping person also gets 2,000 amos in each direction because he's no worse than a hefker object. So Omar Mar, we mentioned earlier, b'yantif, the rain falls in yantif, harein karagli kolado. It's like the people, it's like all the people, I guess, whoever would have went ahead and drew the water. So v'mai liknei shvisa boom kindness. Why don't you say, hey, what are you talking about? Shouldn't the ocean, right? All water, right? As we know, there's evaporation, right? Evaporates in the air, becomes clouds, and the clouds come, and it rains, and then the whole cycle of water, right? So the Gemara is asking, well, what do you mean? Why didn't you say that the water, right, which fell on Yantif, right? Where did it start? It started from the ocean, right? So maybe the water should be part of the ocean. So maybe it's not like Rabbi Eliezer. The eat Rabbi Eliezer, right? All the waters of the world comes from the oceans, so therefore maybe it's not like Rabbi Eliezer. So Gemara says, no, I'm Rabbi Yitzchak, Haka ba'avim shniskashim mirav yantiv. No. You can say that these dark clouds that eventually rained from were there from before Yantif. So it wasn't water that took time to go ahead and to evaporate and go into clouds and then come down and precipitate. Rather, those clouds were basically, they were sitting there, and then therefore it was already in the clouds. It was not in the ocean then. Right? Maybe, okay, the clouds that you saw in the beginning of Shabbos, those already, were gone, and these are different clouds. And maybe these new clouds were the water from the ocean. So these lusimani begavai. So first answer is no. Maybe like there was something unique about these clouds, and therefore we know it was the same clouds. Or you can say havi savik divrayim. Maybe it's a savik derabanan, a savik divrayim lahakel. And we can say a savik derabanan. We go lakula. And just two more lines. 1 second. Gor says, we go make them. So the likni shvisa bavim. Why didn't you go ahead and you say that maybe the makom shvisa of the rain is all the way in the sky, is in the clouds? But if they come down, so then it's leaving its makom. So maybe you can say, really, it would have got its makom shvisa up in the sky, and when it falls down, it leaves its makom shvisa. But maybe, remember, we had a shaila. It was yesterday or 2 days ago, right? Whether techumen applies above 10 tefachim off the ground. So maybe you can prove from here that the reason why the clouds is not as the makom shvisa is techumen does not apply above 10 tefachim. The yesh techumen liknish shvisa ba'avim, because if it would acquire techumen, then it would be shvisa in the clouds. So Gemara says yesh techumen. Really, there is tchum above 10. So is not approved, and yesh tchumen umaya ba'avia mivla belia. But you can say in this case over here that the water is really absorbed, right, in the clouds. It's not really there yet, and therefore it wasn't around Erev Yantiv to acquire its Malkum Shvisa in the air, right? It was not rain in the air, it was in the clouds. So therefore, since it was in the clouds, it wasn't really in existence. So Gemara says, Kol Shekain, certainly it should be Asr. Why? To Havalu Noilad. It should be Asr because of Nolad, right? The water was born now, right? So, it should be Asr, it should be Asr and Yantif. So what is going to answer? I will tell you guys tomorrow, right? Cliffhanger. I know Meir's going to come back because he's going to be excited. But we'll stop here. So tomorrow morning, Mitzvah Shem, we'll pick up from here on Mem Vav Amud Aleph on the top. Everybody, have a wonderful
Rabbi, the suspense. I'm just like so excited.
I know.
Any
Try and get some sleep tonight, Meir.
Afternoon. Rabbi, maybe
Try and
like
get
an
some sleep
afternoon
tonight.
daf. It's not
Try
going
and
to be
get some
easy.
sleep tonight.